is this software thinks that we were still muted. 3, 4, 5. Okay, now I'm seeing some bars.
But
I
we
think
gotta
need to
go.
bring that down, bro. Unmute here. I still had that muted there. Okay. All good, all good, all good, all good. And the camera wants to focus on our mic. Let's see if we can bring that up a little bit.
How's that?
Okay, I think a little bit better. All right. Karen, you can hear okay. Everything's good on the sound. Okay, perfect. Now, dude, I feel like we've been away for 1,000 years.
I know, it's only been a week.
I don't know, man. That trip to Europe felt like forever, even when I was out there. So, yeah, we got that.
How was that? How was the conference?
Berlin was a blur because I didn't really get to enjoy the city. I felt like I just worked from the time I got there to the time I left. Dublin, however, I got to enjoy the city a little bit more. And now I got to go back because I just didn't do enough in Dublin. You know, Dublin has what I would call a Nashville area.
Really?
It's called the Trinity Bar area. And the roads are closed down and the people are drinking. There's music playing from everywhere. You think you're in Nashville.
Oh, so it's like a nightlife type of.
But during the day, dude, forget about nightlife. Like this is Ireland, bro. Blah, blah, blah.
Just all day.
All day, bro. I want to go back and spend a little more time. And Ali was sick when we got to Dublin, so we didn't get to do as much as I wanted. As much day drinking as I wanted. Yeah, we got to go back. And I didn't know, but the U.S. immigration and customs, or at least immigration. Yeah, immigration and customs is in Dublin.
Oh.
So I did my global entry in Dublin and then landed like a domestic flight.
Oh.
I know. It's almost, and there was nobody there, right? So it's like, I want to go through Dublin now every time.
Just because.
Spend spend a day there and then just go through immigration and customs there.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So then you land here and you don't have to go through customs.
No, you land as if you just came from Missouri or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, Canada has that too, which is awesome. Like, it's so nice to get through that. So you're just kind of landing as a domestic flight. Because, I mean, I have global entry. It's fast anyway. Mm-hmm. But the walk and all the other stuff, if you can get it done early, it's game on.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just gives me more incentive to do that. Now, everybody might notice something different with my IDE. I'm now using Cursor. I played with it for a couple of days, and is there a way to? I want this to come up without this chat window coming up first, but I'll look at that later. I'm still learning some of the settings, but the nice thing about Cursor has been it has not been in my way. If anything, it's been really nicely making my life better. Now, I've been doing a lot more Python for the last 2 weeks than Go, but I did a bunch of Go changes yesterday. Mm-hmm. And dude, I'm telling you right now, I'm 100% more productive.
Really?
The changes I had to make yesterday, a lot of it was just mundane sort of coding. Like, there wasn't anything exciting. I just was restructuring and stuff.
Yeah. And it indexed. It seems like it indexed it pretty well.
It knows the last thing you're doing, and it can somehow tie that back to what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. On Python, it was excellent with some of the mundane stuff. And I did a nice refactoring. I wrote a new package and did some stuff. Was never in my way. Much better than even Copilot code completion, not in your way. Now, I'm always fighting that.
Yeah, I noticed it immediately
when I switched. You don't fight it anymore because it's not doing it unless you specifically ask it to with that tab.
Yeah, it won't give you the whole entire function like
unless you ask for it.
Exactly. I know. It just gives you like the next few lines.
Well, people will see it today. So we're going to do that. Now, even though it's only been a week, feels like a month.
Yeah.
I'm going to pray that we have some notes here. I know we still haven't gotten peer-to-peer programming. I started playing with Tailscale at Prediction Guard. well, I should say Florin's been playing with Tailscale prediction guard, so we can access the control plane of our new Kubernetes clusters in GKE. And that seemed to work fairly quickly for those guys. Pavel and Florin know what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So based on if you know what you're doing with networking, they got that up pretty quick.
Yeah.
I do have the Tailscale, if you see on my screen here. I don't have it on right now, but they have a Mac app, and then I used Brew to install a CLI tool.
Yep.
But this is logged in with my prediction guard email, because we have a prediction guard account that basically you can see all the machines in your group.
Gotcha.
And then you can use that to sort of create connections or something.
Exactly.
I don't know enough yet. So I don't know how that's going to work with us not having a group. Though Florin said you can use a free. I don't know. We're going to bring Florin on.
Yeah, for sure.
Can't be this week because he's going on vacation. But sorry, he's in Europe on holiday.
On holiday.
Yeah, they say holiday, not vacation. He's going on holiday, and then when he gets back next week, I think we'll try to bring him on. Though I didn't want to do any shows in July because I'm going to go to Alabama, but I'm going to bring all my stuff, and I'll have stuff. We can do it in the morning. I need to do something while I'm there. Though my plan in July is there's a cool blog post that Thorsten wrote about what is it called again? Hold on. How to build an agent. And he goes like, Thornton's badass. He works over at SourceGraph. He's working on the AMP product over at SourceGraph. But he has a how to build an agent. So my plan was, let's see if I bring this up here. My plan was to walk through this blog post sort of step by step and really try to understand this code, and maybe added a demo for the Ardan AI stuff.
Okay.
I thought it'd be cool. But now that I'm getting deep into Python to run models, and I was spending all morning on dependency management. We're using some kind of cool tool called UV to do that. I think it was written in Rust or something, but this thing is pretty bad, this UV. Pretty badass, not bad. So I've been learning this tool today, but I want to learn what the Python looks like to download a model from Hugging Face and sort of run that. We can extend our thing at some point to do that work too. I got a decent amount of memory on here. We might be able to run a really small model that way.
And just run it like on your machine.
Yeah, but it would have to be like a 1 billion, like super small,
nothing,
right?
Nothing
but
insane.
You have to wrap that. I mean, the models are just a database of numbers, so you need something that does all that stuff. So there's some Python involved. It's my understanding that they give you some like sample Python on the Hugging Face side, but the one thing I'm super interested in, and maybe we bring Mickey on for this too, is Python. There's got to be some form of concurrency, you would think, in modern
concurrent execution,
right? Python or something. So what we might also do once we feel like we're done with this project is look into this stuff. What I learned about Python is they have the concept of modules, which is very similar to packaging in Go. So the same project structure we're using, we can do in Python. It's beautiful, right? A lot of the packaging concepts and architectural stuff that I do in Go apply. And we already worked on the one project for that client where you saw the project now, right? It's pretty badass. So, but I would have done more in that project with the packaging side because that code already existed. I couldn't go crazy.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't go crazy, right? He still had to maintain it, but I went as far as I felt like I could go. But I think there are things here to learn. Now we're working on a project where it's a Go service, but there's one thing we have to do you can only do in Python. So we built a little Python program that we're going to execute and shell out to run to do the diarization, which is basically telling you different voices on an audio thing. So there's so much that we can continue to do on the show once we bring in some Python here and then show how to integrate Go and Python together.
And that's useful because I mean we're doing that sort of. It seems like we're going in that.
There's no way
direction.
out of it because all the heavy duty AI support right now is in Python. If you're just going to be calling models and stuff, we can do all that in Go, right? Building an API server was the best thing to do was in Go.
Yep.
But if you're going to be interacting, loading models and interacting in that way, like it's Python, or you're going to be doing very specific sort of things like that project that we're doing with processing things. If it can be done in Go, we do it in Go. But when it can't, you have no choice.
You have to do it.
But this is my concern here, right? Like, I want to learn this, and maybe we bring Mickey in and we hack for a couple hours on, like, what's the best way to do this sort of stuff? Because I imagine this stuff becomes important when we're interacting with models. Maybe not, I don't know. Even the fast API, like, I don't know how that handles concurrency. So there's a whole world here of like unknowns, but we're going to have to get Mickey involved to sort of help us there. So I'm going to be learning that stuff in July. I want to go through this stuff in July. Really excited. I think there may be an AI demo that we can leverage there. So those are the things I'm looking at for the summer.
Very cool.
Endless stuff. Okay, but let's get back to our sort of project here, because until we put this last little piece to bed, we can't play with some of the other stuff. Though when we did the agent mode, that was nice.
I think that was like the highlight
of the whole All right, so add new client, drop function to TCP package, and extend out. Okay, so we needed an event to let us know when a socket connection dropped, because we need to clean up our connections on the app side. Finish the work on the TCP client manager. Finish the dial API, saving the client to the new manager, line 146 UI, and look up the user in the new manager. Add a new route for establishing a PGP connection in the app layer. Yeah, we need that. When we double click on the UI, we've got to be able to establish that. And that's what those two things were, and then Tailscale. So I vaguely remember all this stuff here, but I do remember that this is our new client drop function. Agents is there, client. Okay, so let's see if we can sort of remember this right here. Oh man, this sucks. We need a way of knowing when a client drops off, but I don't think it's in this. I think it's in TCP.
TCP client.
It's in TCP. Whoa. So here's Cursor coming in and doing some automatic linting here.
Yeah.
What did it find?
Address.
Add or returns a listening network.
Methods on the same type should not have the same.
So I don't know what linter this thing is. Oh, this is in ST10116, which means it's coming from static check, and I somehow methods on the same type. I guess it's complaining this shouldn't have the same.
Should have the same receiver name.
Scene1xt AX serve. I don't know what. I honestly have no idea what it's complaining about there. And this one's easy to fix. But this one I don't understand. It doesn't want it to be called address because the other one is there. Methods on the same type server would have been, should have the same. Let me just see something. So it doesn't, for some reason, oh no, see that didn't fix it, which is good. So I've got maybe I can get more information from static check. What is, come on, Bill. Static check code mean. Let's see if Claude has information here.
Let's see.
I could look it up on the browser. It would be nice if it comes up here. See, now it's searching the web. So I at that point I could have just done. Is it saying
The receiver might not be
I'm not using SRV for everything here?
everything is SRV. Yeah.
So
I would maybe try the fix in chat and just see what it does. And see what it spits out.
because the server is spelled the same, so I don't know if this is confusion or something. It's weird, right? Also, it's on.
Oh, it's asking you to go to auto.
What is it asking me to do? Use auto mode,
Yeah,
right?
just go to auto. Yeah.
That way it could hit multiple servers, but it's not inconsistent.
At least one uses T server as a receiver.
Okay, let's find it.
So maybe that's somewhere else, and it's
blowing up here, right? I don't think that's gonna be the case, but
stats.go.
That's interesting. So this is the cool thing about Cursor, right? VS Code didn't catch this. No,
Yeah,
I don't.
Copilot didn't.
Yeah, Copilot with the language server, right? Go please, didn't catch this. We haven't been running static check locally, so I didn't catch it there. But here's like when this Cursor environment is amazing because it catches stuff like this.
Yeah.
Really well, beyond even what the language server Go please basically has been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helps your code be cleaner when it sees these things. Again, it wasn't in my way, right? I get annoyed. It's just funny it landed here out of all places, right? It should have probably landed here. But that was a good question to ask, and I found it. So,
yep.
Okay, little sidetrack there. Now, let's go back to the idea that we need to know when there's a drop, right, in the connection. On the server side, I think we needed to know when there was a drop on the server side. That way we could sort of clean up after ourselves. I'm going to go back and read that again. So add new client drop function to TCP package and extend it out. Then finish the work in the TCP client manager, which I imagine was, where did we put the TCP? Didn't make it a domain thing. Did we make it a foundational thing?
Or was it?
It's not
domain and app.
Oh man, this sucks.
Handler.
No, if I wrote TCP client manager, that would have told me that this thing actually existed somewhere.
Yeah.
In
chat bus.
Okay. Okay. This is good. So in chat bus, we have a dial, drop, retrieve. You have to implement this. Weird. I already have a drop in here. Maybe we added that before. Okay, so the chat bus has the, see, in order to pass in a client manager, we've got to have a drop. Okay. So then my question is, how is the client manager constructed? Because we've got to add it to this thing here, right? comes in off of the config. Okay. Here. So now we've got, okay. All right. That did not help me at any level. Okay. So the client manager, oh my God, dude, I just don't remember any of this.
Yeah.
This sucks. Okay. So we don't have a client manager for any of this. This sucks. We had a UI client manager. We need a TCP client manager. Here we were doing a dial to do a connection, right?
No.
Nobody's using this yet. That's fine. So the idea then was we had a business level thing to a business level domain that would dial a P2P connection using our dial function. This is all based on an interface. But the problem here is we're going to have to walk this through a different way. We're going to have to walk this through a different way. Let's start. Finish the dial API. I feel like we started building this TCP client manager. And
I do remember working on that.
I do too, but I don't know if it was this thing here, because this was for, see how bad the name is here? This is stuff that we were using already to handle encryption and all the other stuff and the handshake and stuff. So it has nothing to do with this. We may have been putting it in here. We almost have to go back, clients. This clients, I think we were trying to reuse, remember the client support for both things.
Oh.
So clients here, internal logging, count, copy, add, close. A client represented an actual connection. And then on the server side, when we listen and we got a connection, accept, we'd start a new client connection here and we see if it already existed, it already connected, we drop it, or we'd add it here, right? And this new client function, oh, that's a local one, definition, right, was being used in two different places. Ah, manager. Okay. There's the client manager. Okay. Two different places here. So client manager. Okay. So the client manager manages a collection of TCP client connections. So we get this new one. We're using our clients list already.
Yep. We
had the shutdown, which would call close. This is the implementation of dial. Okay. Well. And establishes a new TCP connection to the specified address. And that in turn called that same logic there, right? Okay. So we were putting the client manager sort of here. And I would like to think that if I X this out, nothing happened. Something happens here.
No client manager there.
Okay, so that's the new client manager. We had wired that in, but we didn't put it in here yet, right? The idea would have been that you're coming in here. Okay, we're starting to
now we're
undo the puzzle here. Now this is going to complain because a client manager, which is a TCP manager, we have an interface for that. Where was that interface again? That was, I think it was here.
TCP.
You need to dial a drop and a retrieve. So this is complaining because all we have right now is a dial.
We don't have a drop or a retrieve.
We don't have a drop. So if we come back here, I just want to do this right now. Hitting bad buttons everywhere.
Oh, gave it to you.
That's fine. See, I like when it does that. It's interesting. Just wants to do that. Now, it doesn't know what common is yet, but that's okay. I just want to double check client error. No, you see? This is a TCP user and an error, not a client. And so this is different. I still think this is different. This took a context, a network, and address, and it returned a client. This says that you need a dial that returns a local TCP user. Then a drop, then a retrieve. So this still might not be right. This TCP client man. Okay, let's go back to this for a second.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm confused here. We have, this is horrible, bro. This is horrible. We have a TCP server that accepts connections, right?
Yeah.
And this will accept a connection coming into the CAP. But what we need is also the ability to make connections when we double click. The idea, I thought, was that this client manager would be that thing. The client manager would give us the ability to, and I think that's why it's at the business domain level, because we're going to have to add a route, right, for this. And I had already added it a little bit there. We hadn't implemented it yet. But this is going to need the client manager in order to establish a connection. Now, if we moved it into the business, that's fine. Okay. And we agreed then that we need a client manager that uses the business layer types. We would need that. That's also a TCP client. So this client manager, being a foundational package, could never in a million years use that type system. Could never use it. It's going to return a client. But my guess is whatever the actual client manager implementation is that we implement, it's going to have to use the foundational package, right, to do these things. So I don't think we finished implementing sort of this yet. But once we do this, we're going to get back a client. See, I have a feeling I know what's happening here. This is going to return a TCP user.
Okay.
We want this client manager to manage this user. We get it back because we're getting it back because we might need to use it. We're going to have to, well, when somebody hits submit now, so let's find that code for a second. You see, when somebody hits submit, what happens? Let's go back to here for a second. Today in this code, what happens? We have a WebSocket connection, right? So data can come in off of a WebSocket or it can come in off of a NATs. The new business sets up the NAT stuff, but the WebSocket stuff would have been set up. It would have been set up here. So here's chat UI listen. This is UI read message. So this is the WebSocket stuff. See, WebSocket. So let's go back here for a second. So we read a message. It's an incoming message. We
Yeah.
make sure it's signed.
Yeah.
This code is in their business UI. Okay, perfect. So here we do it. Now we want logic to match the order. So we use our UI client manager to determine if we already have a socket connection from that user.
Yeah.
If we do, positive, then we send it.
Yeah.
This is the work that we're trying to do now.
Yes.
Check if we have a P2P connection, right? Through here, and do that. Or we use NATs, which comes out of here.
And that's where we're using retrieve,
Okay.
which we don't have.
Right. Now, on the NAT side, what we said was, if we don't have a WebSocket connection for the user, then drop the message on the floor because we can't deliver it. And we're fine that way. Because this is like a delivery. This would never go peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
But this for sure could be a peer-to-peer. So we were at this point where check if we have a P2P connection for the user. We needed this sort of retrieve implementation.
Mm-hmm.
We needed a retrieve implementation on a TCP client manager, right? The UI client manager is also, I'm going to guess here, an interface.
Yeah.
Right. And now if I go back to main, we had that user mem new. And user mem was implemented under storage. That was a UI client manager, which managed a bunch of, okay. And then I was like, I don't know if I like the idea of storage there anyway, right? Because,
Yeah. And,
but we're not going to do anything about that right now. So if we go back and look at this, the implementation of this interface came from here. We're going to need to implement this interface also sort of here. Okay, we may want to change this name now to sort of connect it back to this, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of this would ever actually be, yeah, I don't know if we'd ever, I mean, we could write stuff to the database, but you can never have your WebSocket connection in the database sort of anyway. But that's fine. We'll fix that later. The thing is, we need an implementation of this. Okay. And so we already started thinking about that here. Okay, we're getting closer now.
Yeah. So.
Right? We had already thought, okay, no problem. The idea would be to retrieve and then perform
The send.
the P2P send. Okay. However, you'd only be able to send this. You would imagine that the client manager, sorry, I keep doing that. The client manager would need we have the idea of the dial, drop, retrieve. You'd also need the ability then here to do a send to this person, ideally. Okay. My guess is that we're going to need to use this client manager because it already handles TCP stuff. And I think this was going to be our low-level sort of fruit. Creating a new client manager that already knows how to manage a set of clients. with handlers to, yeah. But I don't think we, yeah. Dude, oh my God, bro.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, this was always a lot of moving parts.
Exactly.
So there's always a lot of moving parts here. Okay, so I'm going to come back to what we know right now. The idea is that this dials a connection, puts it into the client manager's database, right? And then I don't know what else we would have really had to do there. And then here we did the retrieve. And then my guess is we would have needed the ability to send this message. But to send that message, we would have had a client. And even on this client, we only have close read. We don't have the ability to send there just yet. So my brain's trying to figure out where we sort of start with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to start. I know if when I double click on this, we're going to want to call into the chat bus to dial the PTP connection. That I know. Okay, that I know we have to do that. And I know we added the dial in order to do that. Dial PTP connection. And I know that assumes that we're going to be using a client manager that has a dial function. I do know that our client manager here has the concept of a dial function. Our problem is we've got this type. We're going to have to convert it to the other type. Okay. So I think the following. I think the only way we make this start to happen is we need to add a concept of implementing this client manager interface. And this is implementing a UI client manager, right? Okay. So I think I'm going to do the following. I'm going to rename this to managers. UI client manager.
Okay.
It's going to break a bunch of stuff, but UI client manager. That's what you're going to be called now. And UI client manager. Managers. Okay. And then you're going to be called that, and that's going to be fine. I'm just going to reload the window sometimes. Okay. So that's going to be managers. That's going to be the UI client manager. What we need to do is implement a TCP client manager.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I know. Just give me a name. I don't really care. Okay. Don't do anything else. Leave me alone for a second. Now, you see how I called this users, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically what it's doing here, right? The client manager was just managing sort of users around connections, and that's all that interface had to do. So adding a user, updating, managing. In our case here, the dial was going to add a user. And if the connection, I'm assuming if we want to drop the connection, we had to do that. There's still an event involved. And then we had to know if there was a, like, I don't even know we're using drop in this case. I know we're using retrieve, right?
Yeah.
So dialing was like adding in our particular case.
Yeah.
So even if I, just to keep things right, this is the UI client manager.
Okay.
Which is fine. I can keep you there for now, doesn't matter. Then I would argue that if I just steal this code here, this would be the TCP client manager, right? So, user management for UI connections, really is what that is. Okay, I'll worry about storage there later. Okay, so now the difference here is that we're going to need, I think we're going to need a star we're going to need this client manager because it knows how to essentially, our client manager, what we built here.
Yeah.
It's the one that knows how to dial, right? And once it dials, it starts a new client and it maintains the set of clients here, right?
Yeah.
So we get a connection and then we start a new client, which adds it. And we have the ability. What we don't have right now is when that thing drops to get an alert back. But we have to do it from here.
So that's where it's going to be.
That's where the drop is. It's going to be here because at some point, right, we're going to do client start. Which, if we go back here real quick. All right, new client, client start. Launches this read, okay, which is reading. At some point, this thing's going to close, right? Yeah. It's going to close because an error occurred. We're going to need to know, this is all in a go routine.
Yeah.
Right? At some point in here, we're going to need to know that happened. We can report it back. I think we're going to need to know that happened. So we're able to dial, and if this doesn't return an error, we have a connection, and we have the client to sort of do that with. Once you have a client, you can make connections, but I still think this just starts the go routine right now. It's not, it is adding it to this. I imagine there's a remove call somewhere.
Start, close, read.
The close does it. Delete, right? Delete it from the map.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would happen regardless if the connection is sort of closed or not. problem is that now the client that we're sending back is no longer sort of valid. Like we're removing this from the this client's list, right? That we got.
Yeah.
So, and essentially now that client is closed. We also don't have a way of specifying that the client is closed here, but that's another story. Okay, so the manager starts a new client, you get back this client. Thing is, this client may or may not be valid anymore, is our big problem here. Okay, so in this case, let's just play this out a little bit more. I don't know. Man, my brain is not working today.
It's just hard going from that.
I know there's too much.
There's a lot of code.
Yeah, which also shows that we've lost control of the code base a little bit because we can't. It's not obvious what we have to do here.
We aren't stepping.
Okay, so I need a client manager for this TCP client manager. I also know that the TCP client manager has to implement at least this method. Which again does require the chat bus. Why it never wants to bring in this, I will never understand. Okay. We know we've got to implement this, right? And the idea is that it would do this call. TCP user. Yeah, I don't know if this should be a pointer or not. It just represents a user in the system. It does have a TCP client connection. I'm going to use value semantics. I don't know where we've used this before.
Okay.
Because this chat bus is the TCP users here, right?
Oh, chat bus.
That's it. We must have just had added this. Just like a UI connection.
Yeah, chat bus.
Yeah, we used value semantics, which makes sense to me. So let's do this. Yeah, and the interface was built that way anyways, value semantics, right? So this is the idea, but we need to construct one of these, right?
Yeah.
That's where like
nice
Cursor just chimes in. So we've got the user ID. We don't have a name, do we, for a TCP user? Weird that we had this idea of a name. I don't know what to do with that yet. Yeah, I don't know what to do with that yet. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
I don't remember the reasoning.
That's not our big problem right now. And now this gives us the ability to, okay. But when we do this with the client manager, which is our manager here, now it starts the new client and we sort of keep track of it at this level that it's there. We also at the chat bus have the retrieve. Now this is where I think we're going to have to manage TCP users at this point. I think this is where it gets sort of sticky. Now I don't know why it used sort of T there, but that's fine. So let's take a look at this for a second. Oh, shoot, hold on. All right. Of course, he got here early.
Yeah.
So, see this idea of a retrieve?
Yeah.
Okay, this is where my brain got stuck. Our client manager here, it does have a collection of lower level socket clients, right?
Yeah.
Remember, all this stuff too is, if we look here, it's sort of unexported to us. Add, close, copy, count, fine. So at a low level here, we were using that client list to do things. However, when we're working up here, we're not working with the lower level. We're getting back the lower level client.
Okay.
But we need to work at a higher level here. We wanted to work at a TCP user sort of level, just like we were working with a UI connection level. So that would mean that we have to manage our own sort of set of TCP users in order to be able to retrieve and return back a TCP user, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So this manager here, just like this manager here, right? We just do this sort of again.
TCP user.
Okay, so let's say we did that, right? We're going to manage our own TCP users. Now, if I come back here, right, and we had add, remember all this logic sort of here, right? Our problem is that we don't have an add because we want to do the dial. We want to stick the dial in here and get rid of some of that complexity, right?
Okay.
So imagine the following. Let's use, we used U over there. I hate this T, but let's just do T. So we can now lock and unlock. Now, on the other side, we have this user ID, but here we have this user ID, right?
Yep.
Some common address that we're assuming that we have when we do dial because we're asking for it. All right. Now, on here, we do that. We do that. Do that. T there. And then we could do T, right?
Cursor giving it to you there.
Yeah, I'm not even paying attention. So nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so look, we're going to dial a socket connection. We can construct our user. We lock, unlock, and we'll add it to our user list. If it already exists, that means we already have a connection, apparently. Again, we're not dealing with drops very well.
Gotcha.
And then we've got the debug, but we'll call this, I don't know, we called it chat, but dial. I don't know what to call that. And then we return it. See, now we have the ability to do a retrieve because if I sort of steal this code for a minute. Now, what's killing me is that I feel like we're rewriting another list of users, which is another potential of things out of sync.
Yeah.
Right? Like at a TCP level, we already have this. But you have the ability to get a list of all the clients, add, close, find a client based on a TCP address. It's kind of low level, right? Our manager is essentially leveraging that list, though we're not doing anything with it here. we're able to find a client on a TCP address, which is basically their local address on the TCP connection. So a part of my brain feels like we started writing this manager, right?
Yeah.
That could dial a connect. Like we started writing a manager that would allow us to establish connections with the go routine. I don't see here where if a message comes back to this client, which is going to happen. Oh, well, I don't see where when a message comes back to this client, which is here, right? How these handlers are getting implemented. Because remember the whole handler stuff that we did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? There are handlers that need to be implemented here. Handlers. When you call new client. So when we call new client, we have the CM handlers. Right?
Yeah.
Handlers are coming in off of the, right, here are the handlers for the config. And if I come back to main, where we were constructing this client manager, oh, TCP app, new client handlers. See that?
Yeah.
We didn't implement them yet.
Bind, read and process. Yeah.
We didn't implement, there's the code for handling all the lower level socket stuff. So,
Okay.
so when I think about this, we're doing this at a low level TCP client, right? We're going to create the manager. This is going to happen. This is after we establish a socket connection. Okay, my brain's starting to work now. This is after we establish a socket connection. So if I come back here to the business layer, remember at the app layer, we need to connect. We're going to have our, we wanted to do this at the chat bus. See, this is what's kind of weird to me. We started building this TCP app to handle the bind, the reads, and the process for both the server side. Ooh, we started building this out here to handle the routes for both the server side and the client side. Okay, hold on. Hold on. We moved this stuff into the business layer, right?
Uh-huh.
Because our chat stuff was in the business layer. Okay. But the actual code that we're going to need to write at some point
Is
going to be here. I remember the drop now. We need a drop as part of this interface. The handlers. The TCP handlers. TCP handlers. We needed this. Drop handler.
Drop client. Okay.
This is the problem right here. We needed a drop handler. We needed to know at this level when a connection was dropped on our face. So we can handle the event that's about to occur. Okay? My brain thinks that we don't need this thing I'm building. My brain says that we should be able to do it with this client manager directly. We should be able to do it here. So from a business perspective, all we need to be able to do is dial a connection and retrieve. Right?
Okay.
Because we need to be able to dial the connection out.
Yeah.
And when we use this add function, where do we use it again? I want to see where we use it.
Right there. 59.
Yeah. And that's part of the handshake. That was like an internal thing. So what I'm thinking here is we want to be able to dial a connection.
Well, wouldn't it be dial, retrieve, and then drop?
The drop's going to be an event.
Okay.
Now, we might need a drop in order to be able to, when that event fires, you might need to be able to do something. Right? Because think about it. For the drop that we just added here, right?
Yeah.
The drop, just like the bind, will take a client. So if I come back here for a long minute, just for now. Yes, just for now, right? A TCP client gives us what? A network connection, TCP address, gives us an IP address, which I think at the end of the day, if we go back to our client manager for a second, right? And we need this here too, by the way.
There's Copilot giving it to you.
Yeah, I know.
Or not Copilot, Cursor.
I know. And I lost it, so it's okay. I didn't listen to it. Okay, so ideally, okay, I think I'm starting to understand this. At the app level, once we establish a connection, everything else is going to happen here.
TCP
We haven't wired
client.
this in yet, but
Okay.
everything's going to happen in here. These are the handlers.
Yeah.
Right? So in main, on the client side, just like on the server side, we had new server handlers. Okay. On the client side, we have the new client handlers, which we put here. So this is going to handle all the communication and traffic. Okay.
Yeah.
What we need then is when this route is hit, when that route's hit, we need to dial a connection. All right. We need to dial a connection. Now, we need to dial a connection. So at the business layer, we said dial. Okay. Now, what I'm wondering is, do we need to return a TCP user at all? Like, I don't know why we did this. Like, I don't know. Let's say I get rid of this for a minute. Okay?
Okay.
Just say I get rid of this for a minute. That might be all that's important. And a retrieve, all that might be important is that we get back a TCP client. Let's just stay here for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Because look, on dial, if this is our dial, okay, this is our dial, then when we start the new one, when we do the add, what is our key? It's the client IP address. Remember that. That's our key, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's our key. So I'm going to simplify this now. And when we do a new client, our IP address, right? That's always going to be our key.
Gotcha.
And it's called bind. So instead of trying to abstract this, right? Instead of trying to abstract this, instead of trying to abstract that silliness, if we allow this to match this, and so what does our dial look like? That's going to be our dial, right?
Yeah.
So let's just let that be our dial. Let's just get rid of this for a second. Okay, now we need a retrieve. Okay, we need a retrieve. So in our dial, we need a network, we need an address. We have an address, we have a network. Like let's just say we're hard coding this, so we don't have to.
Okay. So
we could use the same thing for now, a network, right? Just keep it low level. The thing I'm not mapping at this level is the user ID.
Okay.
Which is a problem because at the app layer, we need to associate this with a user ID, correct?
Yeah, because that's where...
Okay, so let's play this out for a second.
Yeah.
We need a user ID, right?
Yeah.
So what if we go back to our client manager for a second? We make this a string because in this case, we don't particularly care. Okay. By doing that, where we ask for a user ID on dial, then once we get a connection, let's say we pass user ID here. Okay. Again, I don't want to do this twice, is what I'm trying to get at. Instead of using the TCP address as the index,
use the user ID,
right? We use a user ID. Now, let's just say that we did that. Now, the clients, okay, but see, that would change a whole bunch of stuff because we kept this sort of low level, I think. That means a client would have to also have a user ID. What if we did this though? What if we decided that when you add a client, you add a user ID? Let's see what breaks here for a second.
So now the user ID is the key rather than the IP.
Yeah. Let's just see what happens here. I'm just curious. Let's just say we did this for a long minute, okay? Just made those changes.
Yeah.
What breaks? Now, what that might mean, though, is that when you, let's see what breaks here for a second. So on the server side, we have this idea of closed client. Now, God, this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to create another thing of management.
Yeah, but you want to keep it all into one sort of central place
I really do.
rather than having two things for not much.
The question really for me on the server side is this, because you see, we could get away with this by doing that. See, on the server side, if we used the IP as the user ID,
Okay.
right? Find that as a string, even though we use the same mechanics, then we're fine. Because you're going to find this, and you're going to find that, and everything else is just going to work. Everything just sort of works there. Okay? See, on the manager side now, we do that. We do that. And in our testing, what broke here? I think we needed to add a drop, right?
Yeah.
Here. Which is fine right now.
Yeah, this is.
Okay.
So it stops yelling.
Just for now. So you see now what happens is here on the server side, when we do all this, we just use the string, right?
Yeah.
Now what I would say though is it's not letting me. Oh, that was a.
Yeah, that was.
We will need that. Maybe I just pass this as the first parameter for now. See, now if I go to new client, we add it. Now, we didn't add it here, but so now you've got user ID, right?
Yeah.
Even here.
But the user ID is the IP in a
On
string.
the server side. It won't be on the client side. So this is where we got to be smart, because when I say start new client and I have a connection on the server side, See, I don't need to pass it here. This is going to be this here. Essentially, we should just say user ID equals this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, this saves our ass here because we can just specify that that is the user ID on this side of the world.
Got it. Okay. So,
Okay.
okay.
And this didn't care anything. It just wanted a string at the end of the day where it could do a proper lookup. And then we add the idea of a user ID here, which I would then maybe expose this way, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now this manager, when we say new client, we construct a new client now. We're able to capture the user ID. We have a user ID now. Then when we add it to our client's package, we added it up with that key. And we can start it. Okay. So you see we've got that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing we now need, remember from an interface perspective, was what? Retrieve.
Okay.
So now if we go back to our manager, I don't want it to do that. I want it to do this. This isn't a common address. This is going to be what?
String.
A string. Yep. Let's go double check that we did this should be a string now, right?
Yep. String.
Okay. Here we used a common address, but
that's the.
But this is a lower level sort of thing that we're doing.
Okay.
So if we use common address here, we're sort of forcing at our foundational level something that we shouldn't be.
Oh, okay. So you want that?
Yeah, because we're using a TCP thing, right? And at the end of the day, we're gonna basically make this interface match what we have here.
Yeah.
Okay. See, now we have the retrieve. And then it returns the client. You see? I don't know what you're bugged out about just yet, but.
Message to ID.
Oh yeah, we haven't worked on this just yet,
No.
but we'll get there. So what this just did is it allowed us to use the client manager, right, related to this interface. I don't know what we need drop yet for, so I'm just gonna get rid of it until it makes sense. Because now I can come in here and it's complaining about one thing. The client manager, it does not implement, it implements the wrong dial. Have string, 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 want string, string. Okay, let's go back and look at our dial. Right, network address and address. And where is the implementation of our, oh, I got to change this then. No, that's right. Network address, address.
Yeah, that's the one we want.
Oh, I need a user ID.
Okay.
So we got to change this interface to take a user ID. Okay, now this complies with the interface.
Got it.
Okay. See, I don't have to build another.
Yeah, there's no need for another
Another
manager. And
Even like this work that I did before, I wish there was a way to sort of undo it, but I feel like we went too far down this sort of path here. So I'm just going to keep it. Okay, so what did we do? We're starting to build out the TCP manager with everything we need, because we already know it works managing clients. Like I don't want to build another layer of management on top of this. That's where my brain kept going, no, because now you got two lists of the same thing and something's going to get out of sync.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I see the.
So now we have a couple things here. See, the cool part about this is we have a user ID. So now we're establishing a user ID with the dial. And we'll have that because this is going to come in over the route.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We'll have it here. When we make this call, we'll pass in the user ID. We'll create a model for it, right? And so we'll be able to then, with our chat bus, basically, chat dot that, right? Whatever that is. I just want to, that's what we're going to do, okay? A.chat, dial a P2P connection, this user ID, whatever that ends up, however we get that, we already know those things. We can make those configurations. And then what that means now is that the chat bus via this manager that we already have, right? The TCP manager.
Yeah.
Thanks to our sort of interface. And we've already wired that in basically here, right? With the configure the new business. We've already configured it. So once we construct the new business, we now have a proper client manager, TCP client manager. So then when we call this, we'll dial it with that primary key essentially. And then we don't need the client back, just don't need it. Okay, sweet. That solves that problem. The UI is bugging out because we're not ready to write this code yet. So let's just keep that there. You're bugging out because we don't have the drop function anymore. That's all. And Cursor's smart enough to know that we need that. And then on this dial, we need a context, we need a user ID, which can be the address for all I care. Oh no, couldn't be the address. It needs to be something unique, right?
Yeah.
It can just be
I do know.
For all I care. It just has to be unique. All right. I mean, we could use I too, right? That's it. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
But now when we dial, it's a better API anyway because we can control what the unique thing's going to be.
Yeah.
This is what we needed.
Okay.
And then, yeah. And that's the UI client manager. So perfect. So that's the UI client manager. We then have a TCP client manager that we're basically building here one time with code that we already know works.
Yeah.
We've got the ability to dial and then retrieve a user, getting back the TCP client. Now, the cool part is, again, is that remember, the bulk of the work actually happens here. This is when the server side receives a message, can process it. This is when the client side receives a message and can process it. My guess is we're only using the retrieve we're only using the retrieve. Let's go back to bus where we're using the retrieve. I'm not even sure where we're using it. Let's retrieve. We're assuming we need it, and right now we don't.
No.
And it's quite possible that we may never need the retrieve. So what's interesting to me, and I think where we get some confusion, is that we're moving let's just say I take this out too for now. Okay, I just take that out for now. I'm using the business layer right now for just one thing, a dial.
Yeah.
Right? A dial.
Yeah.
Which, oh no, but we're going to need it here.
Oh,
that's why.
yeah.
Like my brain was like, this doesn't make any sense.
The retrieve so we can do the send.
Right?
Okay.
I come back here and we put this in without any problems here. I don't know what this should be yet, so let's just do that, though I know that's not right. Okay?
Okay.
We need the retrieve here in order to then do a b.tcp client manager dot. See, it's not a dial. This is a send. See, we're missing the send API.
Yeah.
So our manager, this is where we've also had a sort of a disconnect, right? We need to be able to just also not retrieve.
Just
send.
Yeah.
I don't know what it wants to do. Now, that would mean that I have to find a user, but the whole reason to do the retrieve was to really send, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that was the only purpose of retrieve at this point.
Essentially, yeah.
Right? So let's just say for a long minute that what we really want to do here is a send.
Send, and then we're just going to have the retrieve code in the send.
And the send, in our case, you see, our send takes an incoming message, which gets converted into JSON. See, it gets converted into we kind of need to do this. We need, what we kind of need is, I need this function here. Oh, sorry, UI. So play this one out. Not a retrieve, but a send, right? Where we know that we have so we're going to have a slice of bytes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's what was important. So we need a key and we need a slice of bytes, right?
Yeah.
We're going to look for that key. We're going to get back the client. The client has a writer. which lets us write a slice of bytes, and that returns you're not helping me anymore. You see that right there?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. The returns.
So we didn't need retrieve.
No, we just needed a send.
We needed a send. Needed a send. We wanted to be slicker about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could like user ID is fine. So then the idea here is send a user ID. I don't know what that is. Maybe the user ID is the to ID.
The well, because it has to know who it's going to.
Yeah, it might be.
The ID of who it's going to.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet. It's so good when it does that.
Mm-hmm.
So you see like TCP send message?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, why did we say from?
From in out message.
Oh, I must use it the same way. So let's just play this out now. So essentially what this now is
there it is. From in message.
there. I think we got where we needed to get.
Huh.
Yeah. Might be nice to say, oh, yeah, it's fine. So look at this. If they have a direct socket connection, we send it. Oh. Our idea of the retrieve was so we would know. See how we did retrieve send?
Yeah.
Now we're just doing a send. And that's a bummer because we don't know if it was found or not. Like just because that fails is not good. We need to know. We need the retrieve.
We need the retrieve to know if send was found. Or
We
if
need
it
the
was...
retrieve.
Okay.
So what we could do is this. Okay?
It has to be broken up.
It has to be broken up. So we could do a retrieve, which would return a pointer to a client and an error, right? Okay.
And it's as a C. Retrieve.
Oh, thanks. So we do a retrieve and return the client. Okay. What I would do here,
Just pass it.
ask for the client here. Because then you could just do a send, right?
Yeah.
On the client.
You know you have a client already, and then you send it. Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. We don't even need the send because of the writer. So remember that. I forgot what we did with the writer. So watch this. Now that it's all coming back to me, there's the retrieve, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I come back here, we can already have the client. Once we have a client, we have a writer. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then we can come back here and do the right thing, do this better. So this would be b.client manager retrieve. If it's found, then we can write our little message, do our send, and it's more in line with the way we've been doing it.
Yeah, it matches what we did above.
See?
Okay.
Yeah, feels better, right?
Yeah.
So that solves that problem now, because if we find it, we can just send it over the peer-to-peer, and we're never using this, unfortunately. There's no right with a context. So we'll just do that. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. Cool. Cool. We've got this, and this has given us exactly just what we need, dial and retrieve.
Mm-hmm.
We get to use all the code that we had here. That now implements the interface. Everything's sort of green. We still got to implement this handler. But we have to talk about what the model is. And then the rest of the code is in here. And the rest of the code is in here.
Okay.
Fudge, bro. There was a lot. The moment I decided that we weren't going to implement another map and we switched to this user ID, everything gets better.
Yeah, it wasn't fighting as much.
Everything. Now, the question is, though, does our hack program still work? You know, we got to try it. Because it does both server and client, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think we had to make hack. All that looked good. Now I'm going to hit Control C. No, that's bad.
Already removed.
So that would
Yep.
tell me that we're not using the right key somewhere. It's going to be tough, bro.
Yeah.
So this is the client side, though, not the server side. Oh, no, server.
No, server side.
So the server side. Okay. So on the server side, the remote address, start a new client, right? I'm just going to do this. Really long.
Yeah. So you see it. User ID.
Yeah, look, it's not the one that we need to be using.
No. No. Why?
Yeah, why is that?
Why?
When Max, come on, buddy. I think it needed to be that.
With a port?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we were missing.
Because I gave it that unique.
We almost need a function. Yeah, we need a function here. User ID, given that, right?
Do that. Okay. And then use that.
It's so good.
And there it goes. Yep. Tab. Yep.
Now the question is, where else are we doing that?
We definitely did that somewhere else. I've seen the IOTA with the port.
I know, but
We definitely did that somewhere.
is that the only place it's used? What if I search for this?
Mhm.
Huh.
Oh,
It's
I
the
guess
only
that
place
was it.
it's used, so it doesn't make any sense then to wrap that like that. All right, let's see what happens now. So if we do this, this gives us a unique, I think. This is the only test we have.
Yeah.
Okay, that worked. So we didn't break anything now with this change. We're just using this now as the key. I think we were using it as the name somewhere like this. And then that's the case, we may want to here,
That's where it was. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe what we want to do
That's where it
is in TCP. We should turn this into a function, right? I think we should turn it into a function. So basically this, right?
Yeah.
IP address. But, oh, given a connection. That's the problem too. Given a connection. Yeah, this has to be written like this. This is with a netcon.
Yep.
That's really what we need, right?
Net connector. Okay. And then
It's not being used. But now I would come in here. Where did we use it? Here.
client. It's probably, yeah, I gave it to you.
Here.
Yep.
And then where did we? In server. Here.
There it is. Just giving it to you again. Yep.
Now I don't need
we
that.
don't need that.
In fact, it would be interesting to see anywhere else we did this.
Oh. That was for. We're already doing that.
Oh, we needed to store the TCP there,
Yeah.
so that was fine. We're doing it there. We need the, yeah, we needed it there. Okay, that's fine. So I think we do local address somewhere too.
You do? Manager.
We just used it for the logging.
It's giving you a suggestion there also.
Yeah, I don't think what it wants. I don't think we need to change any of that.
Yeah.
We were doing it just to log that because we're going to use a user ID anyway. Okay, so let's just make sure our hack program works again. That's good. And we now have some code that got us back to where our brain needed to be.
Yes.
All right. Mental model back. I don't know what else to write.
It's always insane how you can, even just between days, you go from knowing like where everything is to being like, whoa.
So this is what we know so far. Okay. I'm going to write all this down here.
Yeah.
Okay. What do I know right now? Okay. We have TCP app. We need to implement the handler functions.
Yeah.
So our TCP package, we need to add the drop event and call that handler. So what's the next thing we should do?
Okay.
So we need to add the drop event and call that handler in TCP.
Yeah.
And that has to be for both client and server. Then we need to go into TCP app, implement those functions. And then for chat app, we need to add the P2P handler, really. We need to implement that route. That's what we need. Yeah. Now, from a business perspective, again, yeah. So I want to go back one more time. The retrieve we need because we have to do the retrieve here. And then we have a writer. We need the retrieve here. There's no way around that. The only thing that bothers me is going to be this but I guess we'll just keep everything in the business layer. All right. But we didn't call it dial P2P connection anywhere. We're calling it just sort of
Dial.
No, but then we need a function here. Yeah.
Dial view.
I don't even like this. I like this bit of TCP. I don't like these comments either, but we'll fix them later. Yeah, because then this will do a dial TCP connection. Yeah, and we just sort of, that's all it's going to be. It's just essentially this one call because now the client manager is managing that connection for us. That's where all the sort of bad things happened, right? So like we need a model, we need a data model with, you know, user information. And then we can do that essentially. Then we can dial. So we got to do that right there too. So we need to add a drop event and call that, and then for both client server, and then test it with the hack tooling. Then we need to implement those handler functions in TCP app. Then we got to add the route, right? And then add the client support for the sort of double click, right? To establish the connection. Then we can see if we can send some messages peer to peer.
Yeah.
But we've got it under control now. We think.
Yeah.
We know where everything lives now.
Exactly.
We know that our TCP package now, we're leveraging this client manager 100%. We know that we just needed to be able to dial and receive, and we added a user ID as part of that. We know in main we construct the client manager now. We know that implements the interface that we needed. We know that in the UI now, when a message comes in over the UI, we know to check a WebSocket connection, check to see if we have a TCP connection, and then we go NATs. We know we've got to implement these things to deal with the actual message handling. So that's going to be a lot of sort of what we see here, right?
Yeah.
All this code, it's got to move into there. Just like if it's a UI message coming in on the listen here. So this code here is going to end up coming into client's going to send it. The server side is going to have to do that same stuff. We've got at least a few more hours here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we lost an hour just trying to get a mental model of the code again.
Exactly.
We didn't leave ourselves very good sort of notes. But I think these notes are now better, right? You need to add a drop event and call in the TCP package, TCP app, chat app, client. So I think we're good now with all that. We could just check that we didn't break anything with the NATs, at least right now.
Okay.
So let me push these changes up. And even the call, we have an if statement in there. Something could have broke. Let's just see if we broke it. If we did, I'm not going to try to fix it right now.
Okay.
But let's see. Git commit minus adding sort of last notes. Git push. So pull that down. Then what was that?
Whoa.
I don't know what that was. I'm going to go back to Ardan, go back to our project. I'm going to do make run cap. Man, Go got slow or what? There we go. Make run.
TUI.
What is it? TUI?
Yeah, TUI.
Okay, let me switch over to Kevin. Send me a message.
Mine is coming up. There we go.
I got it.
Okay, nice.
Okay, so we didn't break anything.
Good. That's
All right.
always nice.
Good. All right. So I think where we're at is, and I apologize, everybody. It took us an hour and a little bit more than an hour to wrap our heads back around this code.
Yeah.
A little bit of a tangled web we weave here because we've got three communication mechanics now. You got WebSockets, you got NATs, we're adding TCP.
Yep. And then you have a client and the server side.
We had foundational stuff that we were missing. I was about to make a mistake and have two people managing lists of connections, which is always going to get you in trouble.
Yep.
Got to keep things as simple as possible. So burying that in the TCP package, I think, was the only way to maintain the sort of complexity there. So I think we did that right. And I think we've got probably two more show. We might get lucky next week and be able to try to establish a connection between us here. It gets more complicated after Thursday because I ain't going to be here. And we're really going to need the tail scaler. We're going to need ngrok.
Yeah, because we won't be under the same.
No, but worst case,
network.
we run the ngrok client locally.
Okay.
And we'll have well, no, that's only for HTTP. I don't know. We'll figure it out. worst case scenario, we'll figure it out. So we got to at least try next week to get to a point where we can establish it. Oh, it's crazy, bro.
Yeah, it's always crazy going like getting that mental model back.
Plus all the code we've been working on anyway in between.
I know, it's like completely different.
Your brain just wants to shut down. So. All right, and everybody saw a little bit of how cool Cursor is, and that was kind of cool. All right, we're going to sign this thing off. We'll see everybody on Thursday, and hopefully we'll have a peer-to-peer connection at that point.
Yep.